Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody today?
Kelly is a volunteer at SIDE, a nonprofit in Kansas City, Kansas, that provides services to members of the community with mental illness.
We're going to introduce ourselves. Okay, this is the Dual Recovery group on the anti-stigma campaign.
She helps write grants, mentors other members, and is the vice president of the board of directors.
You write your positive affirmations on them.
Kelly is not a doctor or a social worker, but she brings a special understanding to her work. Kelly has a mental illness.
Because I know I see my nurse.
She and every other SIDE member are on their own journey of recovery.
When I was out there, just in my general life, it was half Kelly, half monster. That's what I saw in the mirror. I was angry. I was lonely. I was tired of just being out there.
Kelly had been in and out of treatment since childhood, but didn't find wellness until she came to SIDE.
When I came to SIDE, I was accepted. For me, it wasn't what I could give. It wasn't what I could take. It was who I was, because we respect each other and we give each other peer support. And that peer support was something that I didn't understand.
She really has transformed herself from the person I knew that was every day getting into a conflict with somebody, getting into somebody's face, very angry, distressed, had a lot on her plate, didn't know where to go, didn't trust anybody, didn't see a future, to now saying, hey, Sherry, I want to work for SIDE, I want to work for SIDE. I said, great, Kelly, you're the type of person we need in our community.
SIDE is part of a growing movement that is changing the face of mental health services across the country. As a consumer-operated service, SIDE is a place where peers are helping each other move past their mental illness. They are building new lives, working side by side.
It's run by consumers.
It's shared leadership.
We basically are in the driver's seat.
SIDE is a safe environment with no stigma.
We challenge that learned helplessness. We don't allow that to happen.
It empowers people to see themselves beyond their mental illness.
You have a real family here. Different people that are in higher positions, they show just tremendous love.
This is just a very good setting for consumers to come and be involved and find out that they're really able to do a lot more with their lives.
I just really like it. I'm independent now, and 2 years ago, I didn't think I'd ever be able to live by myself again.
Kelly's experience of recovery from mental illness through working with her peers at SIDE is being repeated in consumer-operated services in communities nationwide. SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, recently recognized consumer-operated services as an evidence-based practice for improving outcomes in persons with mental illness.
I think it's important for people to recognize that consumer-operated services have been around for a long period of time, and that there are different kinds of consumer-operated services. But most often we use the term when it is a deliverable service from one consumer to another that would be of support to them. And we have studied consumer-operated services, both self-help services and peer-to-peer services, and found that, in fact, the evidence shows that the use of consumer-operated services improves the outcomes for recovery for those individuals with mental illnesses that engage in those services.
We got new people coming in and offering opportunities for new people to use their skills.
Guidance, I think.
A consumer-operated service is a peer-run program or service that is administratively controlled and operated by mental health consumers. They are also called consumer-run programs.
SIDE stands for Socialization, Interdependence, Development, and Empowerment.
SIDE was founded by consumers to help themselves and their peers rebuild their lives and support each other in their recovery process. It runs a drop-in center in the downtown area, but it offers much more than just a place to be.
Their members really participate in their program. They don't come in just to sit and drink coffee or smoke cigarettes.
Our focus is toward wellness and support for each other so that people can have lives.
We have many recovery classes. We have 6 or 7 recovery classes
Now, within this peer support organization, we provide leadership, education, research, and training opportunities.
We have many programs like leadership programs. We have a lot of art programs. We have a lot of men's groups, women's groups, social groups, anything that has to do with education. We value education highly, and we also value community service. So we are out in the community a lot.
Consumer-operated services can include drop-in centers, housing and employment assistance, crisis support, education, transportation, and many other kinds of services and supports. As important as the kinds of services offered is the fact that the people offering the services are peers.
We have been through hospitalizations. We know from firsthand experience what it's like to be hospitalized. We know what it means to have a nervous breakdown, to be in psychosis, to be in wellness. And every person here is a member of this community, and we all experience firsthand what it's like to have a mental illness.
I've just seen and heard so many stories of people whose lives have literally been changed because of the peer element.
I just think people feel safer to share with peers because they're walking that same journey. You know, they understand if I'm having a bad day or if I'm having whatever symptoms, there's usually a peer that's been through that can share a coping strategy.
I can walk in that door and know that if I'm having a good day, cool. If I'm having a bad day, even better, because I'm with my peers.
We weren't brought up to say that it's okay to say that we're having a bad day or that we're hearing voices that was not okay. And the great thing about peer support is here it's okay because they really are family.
SIDE maintains a good relationship with the nearby Wyandotte Mental Health Center. Traditional mental health providers there have begun to recognize the value peer services offer.
Having the lived experience, having the hope that people really can recover, that the person delivering the service at SIDE has had that experience themselves, makes all the difference in the world.
There are a lot of things that mental health professionals can do to help people in the recovery process.
But what's even more critical is that the consumer be able to develop a social support outside of the mental health system.
Consumer-run organizations can offer such a variety of different activities that we're not able to offer at the mental health center. I think it's able to meet the consumer where their needs are at the time.
Many consumers that we serve have lost their families, their friends, and really have no one else to rely upon. So SIDE really fills that role for consumers, and I think ultimately that social support network, the community integration piece outside and apart from the mental health center is critical to a person's recovery.
Far from seeing consumer-operated services as competition, mental health providers are now seeing consumer-run organizations as partners who can help bring more services to their community.
One of the huge benefits of peer support is that they really free up a mental health center to do what we do best and deliver those services that are recovery-oriented, partnerships with consumers, but are clinical. Whereas they can provide a lot of the peer support, the friendship, the networking, the developing of a sense of hope and that reclaiming your life is possible. And if you can marry those two approaches, you really have, I think, a complete set of services and supports that help people along the path of recovery.
The sense of partnership between SIDE and the Wyandotte Center is not an isolated case. A growing body of research and experiential evidence supports the work of consumer-operated services. Managed care companies are recognizing that the promotion of wellness through consumer-operated services can prevent expensive hospitalizations and reduce the need for acute care services.
There is outcomes research, and there's a good deal of practice wisdom, and there's any number of consumer-operated services all around the country which show every day that this is not only a possibility but a reality, and that people's lives are improving not just a little bit but dramatically.
Jean Campbell is the principal investigator for the government-funded COSP Multi-Site Research Initiative.
What we found overall was that these programs are extremely effective when offered as an adjunct to traditional mental health services in producing well-being, to promoting wellness.
The multi-site study findings establish consumer-operated services as an evidence-based practice.
In other words, if you deliver the services the way they're intended, you will get the outcomes. And in this case, that means you will have people that have greater well-being over time.
This growing body of evidence is changing the way policymakers look at consumer-operated services.
The reality is that our service systems have to operate more efficiently, and they have to operate more effectively. We think that using COPS and having COPS be a part of our service system actually help our service system to operate more effectively and efficiently.
It extends an overtaxed mental health system, a mental health system that's underfunded, where we have a capacity problem. You're creating the potential for more services for people who need services and supports.
They're cost-effective, they're creative, they're life-affirming, they fill in gaps. We know that the mental health system struggles with people who get lost in the gaps. So as a policymaker who is responsible to the citizens where I live, it's important that I do what I can to fill in those gaps. And I believe that consumer-run organizations do that.
I mean, this is really recognizing the people that you serve as having a dynamic and sensual role in their own care. And that's a shift for people. I think there is some reluctance. I think there is some hesitation. I think there is, frankly, an educational process. But I have found that over time, even those individuals who had resistance, once they see a consumer-operated service at work, once they talk with individuals who have benefited from consumer-operated services, they really do, I think, embrace it and become advocates for it.
Self-help and peers helping peers are fundamental elements of the recovery movement in mental health. They represent a fundamental change in the way we think about people with mental illness.
The whole recovery movement, particularly the voice of the consumer, is in a lot of ways a civil rights movement. And people are not going to go back to a system that is driven without their voice. And so for me, this is not only about how to help a service system operate more efficiently. In a lot of ways, it's about a social movement that says that people who have mental illness have the right, the ability, and should be an integral part in how that service system operates.
As more professionals interact with consumer-operated services, the support for partnerships grows.
I think one of the most exciting things is when professionals begin to see that consumer survivors actually can do things on their own. And when they get to the point of managing budgets and raising money, it's very exciting.
People are very surprised about how effective it is. But when they see people who were once recipients of services who are now living successful lives in the community, working and giving back and helping others, it's probably the most profound thing that really affects people the most.
As mental health systems begin to see the benefits of independent consumer-operated services, the question becomes how to support them.
I think the biggest need of peer-run programs is having stabilized funding. I think that is really key in order for these programs to exist now and to plan to exist in the future.
Policymakers and mental health administrators around the country are recognizing that supporting and partnering with consumer-operated services can improve outcomes for the people they serve.
There has to be a real strong message from the top of the organization or from the top of the system that this is important and that it is not just a nice thing to do, but an important strategy for making the system effective.
We're at that tipping point where we have enough evidence around their success, and we just want to reach over that tipping point and get it into every system.
People like Kelly and organizations like SIDE are living proof that consumer-operated services can make a difference. You too can make a difference. Order a free resource kit on consumer-operated services at mentalhealth.samhsa.gov. The kit provides practical information and materials for policymakers, practitioners, advocates, and consumers.
We are not our mental illness, we are people. And that's always stuck in my head because I'm not a mental illness, I'm a human being.
It's just an incredible, unique partnership that we have with SIDE, and I can't imagine not working with a CRO. I just can't.
There is a bright future out there, and that the mental illness doesn't have to be that stopper and that catch-all. There's life beyond mental illness.